Good evening. I call this May 20th, 2021 meeting of the Morrisville Town Council to order. This meeting is being streamed on the Town of Morrisville Facebook page and the Town of Morrisville website. On May 25th, a video of this meeting will be uploaded to www.townofmorrisville.org/government/live-video. Please visit www.townofmorrisville.org for updates regarding future Town Council meetings, or feel free to email townclerk@townofmorrisville.org with any questions. There are two discussion items on tonight's agenda: FY 2022 proposed annual operating budget and related items discussion, and a bond referendum update. Town Manager Martha Page will open our first discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually just going to open it to turn it over to Jeannie to go over the FAQs that we've provided Council, as well as updates from the first version that you got.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. It's good to be with you. I'm going to try to be expedient in my delivery of information here. So let me pull up the FAQ, the second version. We just have a couple of updates that I just want to touch on just to make you aware. So we've validated this particular estimate here, as we indicated, and we're comfortable at this time with leaving the estimate at $1 million for potential lap salary. It is an estimate at this particular time, so we do have several payrolls that we still need to process through. So that was one. And I believe it's on page 8. Oh, sorry, I'm a little tracking was not fast enough. So I added just the definition of what is allowable uses of parkland pavement in lieu. It's a quite restricted source. It's only for the acquisition or development of recreation, park, and or open space sites. It's very specific to park-related items. And the final one is on the last page, and that is just gave you some information after running a few scenarios on fund balance, looking at 2024 if it resulted, or 2024 that would impact 2025's tax rate. If it resulted to a revenue neutral, what would that do to the projected fund balance in the out years? And several scenarios really maintain it above 25% still. Obviously, if you're going revenue neutral as compared to holding the existing tax rate, it's going to be lower in the projected forecast in a long-range plan. But it's still running between 27 and 29%. And I just want to call out, you have a policy that's in place to keep it within the parameters of 45% to 25%. That's your accepted threshold of range for fund balance. So when our projections long range sort of fall between 25 and 45%, it really arguably it implies that there's potential sustainability or capacity in the future when you're running a model that's based on conservative assumptions. The other thing that I would just point out as you read this is that it's significantly important in long-range projections to understand that other things can influence this over time. So a long-range projection, just keep in mind, it's simply meant to indicate if there's potential for challenges or opportunities, so you know where to look and where you can manage and offset and control to stage for more positive results. And one of the things to keep in mind here is Morrisville does have development potential in the future that I mentioned in some pretty significant activity areas. The one that's going to come first is going to be McCrimmon Parkway corridor. That's going to be very impactful for Morrisville. And those are all the updates that we have to the FAQs. So at this point, I'm going to intro that I've also handed out at your place an option for the budget. I'm going to pass it back over to Martha to roll through and explain the potential option for the budget based on some input we heard from you the other night, unless there's other questions.
And I'd like, I'm sorry, Mayor.
I don't see any other questions, so yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to check in. Are there any questions about any of the questions and the answers that you provided first?
Councilmember Garamella.
Yeah, Jeannie, I have a couple of questions. Like let me start with the the FTE comparison, right, for municipalities that you have given us.
Okay.
I wanted to be very clear, like, we can't compare ourselves with Cary or Apex because they have their water and sewer as part of it, which is completely a different component of, overhead that we don't have it. So wanted to ensure that we compare with like similar towns which have, which basically like Morrisville, we don't have water and sewer. So will that be helpful to understand? Otherwise, I'm comparing apples to oranges here.
Mm-hmm. So in our exploration, we purposely took out those elements so that we could get to apples. So what you see here should be general fund stormwater programs that are related to and similar to Morrisville. Just like in Garner, we pulled out the fact that they have do not have they have a volunteer-based fire situation. So that was something that we had to account for.
So I'll clear up, we've done that adjustment to make them comparable.
Okay. So
That is accounted for in the numbers here.
perfect. And then the cars, I asked for the policy, and this is helpful. But the thing is, it says police department 6 years or 85K, right? Whichever comes first will be, they will be recycling it. So do we know how many in a year, you're putting miles? Like, are you putting close to 2,500 miles or, 25,000? Usually when like a regular person drives, they put average of 10,000 to 12,000 miles, that's the average. But police cars are pretty much rotating, 8 hours, and I'm sure the same vehicle is taken and done by a different, officer. So wanted to understand, which one in our latest trend has been, is it 85K, and how many years is it taking to achieve that? Because if I'm clear.
So let me make sure that I understand your question. So your question is about vehicle replacement plan, number one. Number two is you want to understand annual mileage that might be attributing. Does it automatically hit? When does it hit 85? Is it at the 5th year? Is it at the 2nd year?
Yeah, because if someone is driving continuously, you can easily generate 20,000 miles in a year. Mm-hmm. So does that mean like in 3 years you're almost hitting 85 compared to now it is like you have this policy as 6 or 85, but I wanted to see with the present trend, how is our miles utilized? We are a small town, we're not a big town, mm-hmm. So you're pretty much circulating within the town. So just wanted to make sure if I can get that.
Okay. So that would be information I would need to obtain if you're looking for some kind of pattern or trend at this point. I will acknowledge to you that obviously your vehicles that are on rolling routes daily are the ones that are going to hit the mark quicker. And that is obviously your public safety vehicles. For vehicles that are in facilities like administration, it's going to take a longer span of time. They'll probably hit the manufacturer's extended life period, but they're not going to hit the mileage. And that is something we need to consider in a replacement plan in terms of making use of good judgment. Is it still a viable vehicle even though it might be 8 years old? Yeah. So that's exactly what we want to look at as we are trying to upgrade and prepare for really a more robust analysis and replacement plan when it comes to these vehicles, because they're so expensive. Every year you're dealing with some capacity to replace vehicles, and we want to be mindful and prudent with that type of projection and level it out year over year so it's not skewing a budget from one year to the next.
Yeah, if you can give us some data of how it was done, and especially the fire trucks, they're so expensive, that's also the same standard, 80 years, 85, and what happens after that, how much money have you recouped by selling it to something, that would also be helpful for us.
Okay. Is it helpful for this budget decision or just helpful for a future conversation?
Yeah, for future conversations. Okay. More important for me is we are continuously putting money, so I just want to understand, are we doing right, or how is it, so that I feel comfortable with that.
And that will come with our update of an assessment of really revamping that vehicle replacement policy. And then obviously, we're including the assessment of fire apparatus. I know that Fire Chief Criddle has already worked and set grounds for trying to improve the collection of data in order to be able to make better decisions.
Perfect. And then two more questions I have, like the one for the lab salary. Is it our policy to use the lab salary within the current budget year, or basically it goes into the fund balance and that's how it is done? So I was not sure.
Anything that is not used falls into your fund balance, so you retain that for use. Okay. You have given me on occasion and one sort of standard. We have a policy, and it's one of the provisions that you approve as a part of your budget ordinance, that I've got some limited authority to move it and use it operational and report it to you for things that occur. And you get reports. When we did that for you in January, we had not done any of that. Okay. You have allowed us to use it for succession planning and some training and development of our staff. Other than that, the only other very unique circumstance we used it was when we did the market adjustments in 2020, that we had the lapsed salary, that we were able to observe that initial amount of the impact on making those adjustments to salary.
Yeah. So am I fair in assessing, like, we are taking one-time expense of $3.4 million approximately, and this $1 million is kind of cuts into it, so it's only 2.4 that we're really using up?
I don't want to definitively say this, but I think you've got the concept right. Okay. As we've talked about before, when we present you a balanced budget, we're saying these are going to be your revenues and these are going to be your expenditures. And we've benefited from revenues that have often come in higher than our projections. And we don't just go use it when we have it, and then when we don't spend our budget, and as we're telling you, approximately $1 million of that is lapsed salaries, yes, you retain that for use. It's also why, and Jeannie, go to the fund balance. It's why when we tell you you've got a budget balancing mechanism, why we don't use it.
Okay.
And I just want Jeannie to show you this.
So there's the lap salary. Let me go and find where I put. Okay. This is the question you're looking for.
So for the 3 past prior years and projected for this year, we appropriated fund balance every year to balance the budget and did not use it. Okay. So you retain it in what I call your savings account or your fund balance.
Okay. And the last question is the MAFC. The numbers are pretty striking when you see you have a deficit of close to $800,000. Two things that come to my mind, how do we decrease the deficit? What kind of programmings can we expand on as one? And then also, when we are showcasing $800,000, deficit, and like pre-COVID, we also said that we lost close to $1 million, right, in revenue. So how much of this is an impact? I know it's not like we are really using, it's not a penny to penny that we are trying to match,
right,
but it is a big, significant amount that we are not able to recoup. So is it something for what you have to give for the American Act, like?
Yes, and again, you've hit on when we've told you over the 2 years, 20 and 21, our projected revenue deficits were about $2 million. Substantially all of that, not all of it, but substantially all of it was from our Parks and Recreation programs. Right. And substantially all of that was from MAFC, even accounting for the fact we took out the closure out of that. We aren't double dipping on that. So when I'm showing you a realistic, it's going to look like an $800,000 loss for MAFC this year, it's because we didn't get those revenues. The expenditures are much lower as well because we weren't using the staff, but it's still a big gap.
Yeah, so that's.
So yes, we've got it in different buckets, but it all comes into your savings bucket. As we tried to explain in the question, they had a plan at MASC to start ramping up membership programs over time. To recognize, we also added expense at that facility. So if the year had gone as we expected it in 2020, and I'm making an assumption the facility wouldn't have been closed longer, some of which was also COVID related. The contractor had COVID related things that delayed the reopening of the facility. But we would have gone from a roughly $225,000 deficit that we were experiencing regularly. That's the commitment to the town to provide that to the community and not cover all our costs. It had gone to about
56.
And so the goal is with membership and programs to, again, reduce that back down to numbers that we're satisfied with.
Absolutely. So the reason for me was like how much of we can capitalize in showing as a loss for us, and so that we can get more revenue from this, from the
ARPA
thing, so that over the next 2 years, it's not just 2021, it could bleed into 2022.
You are
too.
correct.
Yeah.
You are correct. And as we've mentioned when talking about ARPA, it's 2 or 3 webinars a week, and I'm still sort of soaking in all that guidance they're providing to us.
Okay.
They're pretty specific on how we calculate our revenue losses that we'll be able to continue to do that.
All right, those are my questions.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Martha if there are no other questions, Mayor.
One comment real quickly.
Okay, comment?
I was talking to the mayor today earlier about, where we could be more innovative, and just an idea, and maybe this is something we talked about grants, so maybe there's opportunities to get, wellness grant money to as a revenue source to come into MAFC. This pool, I've been to a number of pools. This pool that we have is an unbelievable facility. I mean, I cannot tell you, I've been to all the top pools, and I mean, I just can't believe what a great facility is, and we have so many companies in our backyard. So when we talk about public-private partnerships, I'm not talking about, public-private like we've talked back many years ago about having a private firm come in and run recreation, which is something that happens at, IBM and things like that, because our staff is just remarkable. I've seen our staff there grow so much in terms of the level of service. But perhaps partners, and maybe it's already happening, but partnerships with so many of the companies in Morrisville that we can, have banners at the pool, that they're giving us money to showcase, and then providing like opportunities for those employees to come and swim, right? Just food for thought. I mean, I think there's no time than be very innovative. And I don't think in Morrisville, a lot of times, and part of this might be partnering with the chamber, we're leveraging enough the fact that we have so many great companies right here headquartered in our town. And I think it's a great opportunity to come and showcase this.
Brandon, do you want to share a little bit about Rachel's marketing?
Okay, I mean, I just...
Councilmember Rouse mentioned some of it already.
I didn't mean to throw that out there. I'm just pontificating big picture, so.
I think it's an appropriate point, and so I think what you'll find is one of the challenges we've had is, we've added Rachel Everhart, who is our marketing membership coordinator, which is fantastic, but we've been limited in what we can do because, as you remember the last time that Matt Lieber came in, he was showing you capacity, and so as we've had limited capacity, we have consistently stayed between 80 and 90% of capacity, so we can only do so much growth up to this point because of the limitations and restrictions on the facility. So now that sort of that gate is largely opened up as far as what we can allow, again, Kendall is being very particular to step us into that, but now we have this opportunity to go out with this greater capacity because we're open, and so part of the marketing plan for going into FY22 is to reach out to corporate partners to, hey, look at this facility, your folks have breaks, your folks have lunch, we want to offer rates or partnerships to bring people in. So absolutely see that coming with growth in FY22 and then even more growth in FY23 as we are able to continue to bring our costs and our membership rates back to market, keeping in mind we've essentially surrendered a year.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And I forgot that we had a marketing director, so that's awesome. But I think as a follow-up, where there's an opportunity is post-COVID, less people may be going to work on these big campuses like Cisco, which has an amazing gym, but they don't have a pool. And that's where there's an opportunity is having a place where I'm working in Morrisville now, I can go and think. Like even for me, I don't know whether I'm going to return back to an office. And so for me, there's so many people like that probably can just say, well, now instead of going to my gym, I'm just going to go across the street or down.
Absolutely the plan.
All right, thank you.
Anything else before we go over to talk about option?
I think we can move to the option.
All right, Martha?
All right, thank you. So after our May 11th work session, I reflected after I got home, and then I think Jeannie went home and did the same thing, and we felt like we were hearing some of the same things, maybe different words, but different things from you, which is being able to tell the story of how we're investing in our community for the future, as well as getting the stuff we need to keep doing the things that we need. A lot of that focused on parks and recreation, and a lot of that continues to focus on recognizing, even with our bond referendum, the capacity is going to be limited based on what we may need to accomplish all of our goals. So in order to start that, we provided this a memo, and Jeannie, we sent this to you Tuesday evening after we were able to really figure out a strategy we could provide to you, as well as I think Jeannie's mentioned it's there in front of you. This proposed strategy would establish a park and recreation reserve fund, very similar to your roadway and transportation fund. It would be separate from your Parkland PIL, very specifically for one reason. Those monies are restricted. This would be money that you could use in any capacity that you want to. You would decide how to use this money. It could build up, you could use it, you could save it, and it's based on the same 1 cent equivalent tax that we're using for our roadway and transportation reserve. So adding that funding into the budget, we said, okay, what can we take out? And I'd just like to go over those things with you and try to explain them and answer any questions. So the first one is the deferral of purchase of 3 new police vehicles for the 3 new police officers that we are requesting in the budget. The rationale for us being able to do that is because of vacancies regularly through, and we do keep a reserve of cars, but the new vehicles that we order also end up sitting in reserve. So we have capacity to continue to work towards meeting our, I'll call it full staffing in police without needing to activate a purchase of these 3 vehicles right now. So ultimately, yes. Now, no. And police vehicles are another thing. There's a very long lead time on those vehicles, but we can manage that within our entire vehicle replacement policy. So that's the first one. The second one is a reduction of how much we've requested in the bond referendum costs in the budget, which was a significant number, over $300,000. We still need that money, but we have benefited in our past bond sales from getting bond premium, and we have typically refunneled that in to pay for the costs of whatever project that we are pursuing. We can use favorable bond premium to pay for the costs of issuing bonds. So we just reduce that in anticipation of bond premiums when we sell, which would also be further in our fiscal year next year, so that we would be able to determine whether that, we time our bond sales in some respect to the market. So to create better chances for that to occur. So we would be not adding to perhaps which we could use capital-wise, but we could pay for some of the costs of our issuance of the bonds. The next one is again, a deferral of our wayfinding sign program, just taking this out of this budget and putting it back at some point in time. They are nice signs, but they do not detract from some of the needs that we have to meet in our regular operating budget. We had already phased this program due to timing of roads, and you can't just put one sign up. They have to integrate so that you don't leave people not knowing where they go. This is not the last phase, so we're going to still have this number to work with. But many of them are still on roads that we're working on. The next one is just another reduction in our vehicle replacement strategy. Again, we're confident that we can achieve our goals for a better future vehicle replacement plan. And then the last one is an adjustment for some needed MAFC landscaping, really related to we got what we asked for in our MASC renovations project. It's not adequate. So this isn't something that the contractor failed to deliver, but we need to spruce that up. We are working on the closeout of that capital project. There is contingency money that had not been spent that we are proposing this different source of revenue before it would close back out to the general fund to pay for this landscaping contract. So those substitutes would put the 1 cent increment or equivalent into the budget as an alternative scenario and demonstrate saving for the future as much as meeting the needs of our current operations. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those adjustments.
Councilmember Garamella, please. Sorry, I was glancing that way first.
Let Councilmember Garamella go first, please.
Okay.
So, thanks, Martha. This is pretty good. This is exactly what we were all talking about, and I like the idea that we were able to, or you guys were able to carve out, 1 cent. So a couple of questions regarding this is, I know the parkland payment in lieu is very restrictive, but I wanted to have some kind of a policy guideline even for this. It should not be where spend $70,000 for the restroom restoration, at Morrisville Community Park we did. So this has to be something which you are adding net value to the whole project or any of the things than, using it for operating expenses or refitting kind of things, because that is the whole purpose of doing it. If not, you guys can already have your budget to use it for those things. But I think, thank you for carving it out. I'm good.
So if I could just circle around to Councilmember Garama before we recognize Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson. You set the policy when we set up the reserve. What I just heard was not as a substitute for operating expenses, but I would need council to indicate how they want to define the use of these purposes. I think, Jeannie, I would tell you, you want to use it or leave it broad enough for you to accomplish your goals, but have it state what your goals are.
Yeah, but you think operating would be a part of it? So if it is, then the purpose of it is not.
That is not typically why.
Yeah.
But Jeannie and I, the wordsmithing is always the issue. You're talking operating capital outlay.
I'm saying net new.
Yeah.
Anything net new is all I'm saying.
In terms of really what the guidance or the parameters are about establishing a capital reserve fund, it specifically is for capital-related expenses, not operating. And Martha is correct. When we do the resolution of intent to establish this capital reserve fund, it'll have a defined scope. And Martha is also correct that you want to be careful not to back yourself into a corner by being too specific, having some flexibility and being general, but it will be defined for capital purposes due to the nature of the type of reserve fund that it is.
Yeah, my only, the reason of my asking that is, I know we started with 1 cent for the transportation, which is only for road improvements, and then we did 1.5 and clubbed sidewalk also part of that, like that it can be used for that fund too. So then it becomes more commingled, which one are you using for? Both are important, but I wanted so that we don't use that here where it can be thin stretch very quickly. It's not a whole lot of money, especially for parkland buying or the other stuff. It's just a complementing fund that we are trying to build on top of it.
Understood.
Councilmember Scoggins-Johnson, followed by Councilmember Abadi, please.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank both Town Manager Page and Jeannie for coming up with this so quickly. I mean, when I looked at the budget on the 11th, I really felt that we needed to demonstrate to the public that we were dedicating money every year, just like the Transportation Fund, for our future. Because PIL over time, because we're nearing build-out, will not be replenished. It may be at a slow pace as redevelopment occurs, but I don't think it's going to be as filled in the future. So this is a great step forward. Finding the money within the current budget proposal is fantastic because I really want the bond to pass. I don't want people to feel like we're raising taxes for this cent and then raising 3 cents. That's 4 cents. And we raised the taxes last year 3.5 cents. So there is a bit of sensitivity in the public right now about raising taxes in general, and this really kind of walks that line of we're keeping our fine line here, and we're asking the public permission to borrow. So, and we're investing in the future within our means. So demonstrating that trust that we are honoring the wishes of the public is important. So, and some people have felt like we might need to add more money to this year's budget and the bond. And I just don't feel that way after looking at this. I was kind of on the fence on the 11th because I was a little bit doubtful if we could find the money, but the way you've laid this out, it really makes sense that we can defer and not have pain points within the budget. So I'm in support of this proposal. And also, I don't think you mentioned it, but we usually have budget feedback in November so that if we've been favorable on our budget from the last cycle, we could apply some of those funds to both the general fund and maybe some discretionary spend, which could include some of these items. So I think that is a win-win situation. So I would be in support of allocating some money back to these if we could, just to keep everything moving forward. And then finally, in regard to Councilmember Garamella's request about ring fencing, or at least giving some scope to this capital fund, if you wanted to take some time and think about what a proposed scope might be, I'd be interested in seeing that, and we could deliberate as a council. I think it truly is a capital fund, but greenways are sometimes considered multimodal and could be considered a transportation project as well as a parks project. So we need to be very clear how we view greenways in regard to this fund. It clearly is a parks application, but if this fund wants to restrict or embrace greenways, that would be one example where we might need clarity. So thank you.
Councilmember Robot, oh, sorry, go ahead, do your response.
So a proposed suggestion is we could pull out the roadway transportation reserve authority that you established, draft something up, and have that for you to discuss on the 25th. You'd have a comparison, but then you could refine. We could draft something up, and then council would have something to look at and modify and look at before you would be finally adopted. And that'll help you, I think, with scoping, but not overly restricting yourselves.
Balance. That'd be great. Thank you.
Councilmember Robati.
So I also thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Martha. This is some really, truly great work. I don't know how you went into a budget that already seemed pretty lean to me and found $620,000. So good job. And I may have you come and do my home budget also. So agree 100%.
We need both of us.
Agree 100% with Councilmember Garamella that we need some guardrails on the fund that we're establishing. I'm sure you guys agree with that too. So we're all in agreement there. What I wanted to talk about was, so the vehicle replacement allocation, that seems to me to be a can that we're just kicking down the road. And if this vehicle replacement allocation is something that we allocate every year for the time when we have to replace vehicles, is that what it is?
Yes, typically, based on the current replacement criteria, that's what it results to. But the caveat here is that we recognize we need to reassess what that criteria and policy is. That might allow us to approach it differently each year to level out really and manage that expense better year over year to what we project.
Okay.
It's just changing the strategy a little bit and recognizing some areas to improve.
Even having said that, I generally think that it's not forward thinking to kick the allocations that we make every year for the future for times when we have to spend a lot. And I'm wondering, the vehicle replacement allocation, what was the impetus behind taking this onto the chopping block instead of, for example, we have $100,000 in COVID fixtures in the budget, and and nobody's happier about these COVID fixtures than me, but I'm wondering, is that something that we necessarily need to throw another $100,000 at? I would rather see us think of the future, because if we don't put $79,000 in there this year, are we going to need to put $158,000 in there next year? Like that just seems to me like I think that if we can keep the usual allocations that we should, is my point. So can you speak to the COVID fixtures? Like, so where are they going, and why are they so expensive?
So what I will add, and then I'm going to defer to the town manager on ARP as well. The touchless fixtures in the budget, we're leveraging the resource of the ARPA monies, whereas the vehicles are housed or being paid for through the general fund. So we're trying to find recurring monies in the general fund to be able to have the opportunity for this reserve fund annually to put aside that monies. So the ARPA monies are just one-time dollars, and there are restrictions and limitations to what you could use those for. So the vehicles probably wouldn't align to trade off.
Okay.
So I think I'll see if Martha wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, and she's correct. If you took that out of the budget, it would really return $100,000 to ARPA funds that we could use for other ARPA-related expenses, which we're still waiting on some definitive guidance. So
right. But
it returns capacity to you. Let Brandon and I talk a little bit through this touchless facility. So when we were in the throes of COVID, we explored and assessed all of our facilities in and out about the things to, I'll say, get as much things as possible touchless. And Giselle came and made a fantastic presentation. It was in multiple parts. Staff asked for phase one, which was $120 or so thousand, and is done and is complete. But council approved all of the phases being done. So this money that's in the budget this year is all of those other phases. You could change your mind, but that's why it's in the budget.
Okay, so I would like to see a breakdown of exactly, I mean, I remember Giselle's presentation, but I don't have phase two off the top of my head. So I would like to see that again. And because, I mean, if we can take $100,000, even if it's $100,000 of ARPA money, like I understand your point about the
Right.
vehicles, like I get that, but even if it's $100,000 worth of ARPA money that we could plow back into a small business grant or, I don't know, like anything that would be maybe more helpful to the community that's still feeling the effects of COVID, I think we should look at that. Thank you.
Okay. I have a couple of comments. Now I'll recognize you. Looks like you want to go next. In regards to the touchless fixtures, I'd also like to see a list of what's still going to be happening, but I believe that for sustainability and safety going forward, we're going to have flu season every year and things like that. I think touchless is a good way to go because in many ways that actually saves water as well for any of our fountains and things like that, so they automatically turn off. So that's my thoughts on that. In regards to the option modification for the budget, I think that's really great that staff was able to identify things that they could put off. I agree, though, that I would rather see those things in the budget. I think the budget is good as is. And if we actually want to build capacity to make things better and demonstrate more than just a symbolic gesture towards parks, I think just the penny on the tax rate would actually be more effective. I don't want to delay any more of our investments, even though staff said that they can do it and make it happen. I think that it's more important to keep on the programs and then come back and reduce it later if we want, but not as part of the budget. When we learn more about the vehicle replacement policy and if it changes, that'll be just more money in our pockets later. If there's anything here that you feel doesn't need to happen, feel free to reduce our allocation of fund balance, the $2.5 million. I'd rather do that, but actually build capacity and make the strong commitment to our parks and open space by actually dedicating a new 1 cent tax. To that end, when we did the road capital reserve, it was 1 cent dedicated, but 1/2 cent of that was actually new capacity. And that's where we're going to make a difference as a town. New capacity, not just changing what we call the money for. So those are just my thoughts on this. I really appreciate staff going the extra mile to sort of essentially give political coverage to show that we still support Parks and Rec. But I think that we have a council up here that might be open-minded enough to actually commit the money, new money, so we can move forward on some of the programs that we feel are important. Recognize Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. I'm going to recognize everyone first and then circle back. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
So I want to just say I echo everything Councilmember Scroggins Johnson said. So if you can remember, she said it very eloquently. I agree with everything she said. I thank you all for this option, for, as usual, listening really closely to what council is saying and trying to, not just trying, but helping us get to a really successful solution. So thank you once again for doing that for us. I'm fine with what you have offered here as the recommended alternative strategy and holding on items. I'm okay with that. I do hear what Councilmember Rabati is saying about the vehicle replacement allocation. So the policy that you're working on, when do you anticipate finishing up that work? Is that a fall or is that a next year? Give me some time.
I believe it'll be in our fiscal year 22 work plan. I mean, Giselle is already working on that, but it's a much more in-depth analysis than just taking the next vehicles on a spreadsheet. So she's integrating new factors into those assessments. So you're going to see that in a timeline of probably the fall. And again, The CAFR comes in, that is when we really know what our fund balance is, and we present that fund balance report to you. So it is just like last year. There was really big reasons to pay attention to that. You know, we should every year, but even more so last year because we had so many mid-year implementation strategies in last year's budget. But that's the timing of when we would still be able to execute vehicle replacement if we wanted to. And that's a policy we do want you to look at. I mean, it's operational, but it does affect, it's a big number in our budget. And again, we're comfortable. We wouldn't have offered this. It was hard. This was a hard exercise, but we wouldn't have offered it if we didn't think that based on our preliminary look at some of those other things that we're looking at to really assess the wear and tear, especially on a police vehicle. You do not want to ever put an officer or someone in need of an officer's services in jeopardy. So we're not going to not replace those if we have to replace those. That's not what we're talking about here. But Jeannie and I also have some interest in, again, evening out
The annual projection.
the fluctuations in those vehicles, and how to do that, recognizing we're not just going to take the next 6 on a spreadsheet, that it'll move based on wear and tear. What I'll offer to you is, if you remember, we deferred every vehicle purchase last year, and what you don't see this year is all those in another, because we found out that it's more than just that spreadsheet when you look at the condition of the cars.
Okay.
If that helps.
Yeah, that helps me. I too would rather see the touchless projects moving forward. I see great value in that for lots of reasons. So I wouldn't want to do a swap here. I think I would go along with what you suggested, and I would still include this vehicle replacement allocation on this list. And then knowing full well that come the fall, as we've talked about and as we have done year after year, we can reevaluate and we can fund either the projects on this list or whatever else comes up. And between now and the fall is a long way. And there might be some other really critical needs that we'll need to fund. So I'm good with this plan we have in front of us, and I appreciate bringing us a draft of a policy for this, whatever Parks and Recreation Reserve Fund, whatever we're going to call it. I appreciate you bringing us policy. You know, it is always easier to react to something than to create it. So, and you all do a fabulous job of creating something and bringing it to us so we can react. So I appreciate that, but I also appreciate the suggestion to leave it kind of broad. I totally agree. Flexibility, you've heard me say that over years. The flexibility is really important, but I too would want to make sure that greenways and maybe even sidewalk might be included. I need to think through that a little bit more, but I think for the reasons Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson spoke about, greenways are important. They are a multimodal item, but they're also a recreation item. So for me, I'm thinking they would fit here in this policy. And then the only other comment I'm going to make is I take issue with this comment that staff has given us political cover. I definitely do not see it that way. I see council being good stewards of the people's money and being mindful of just how much our citizens can tolerate when it comes to a tax rate and tax increases. And the fact that their taxes were raised last year, their taxes will be raised next year with the bond, for me says this is not the year to think about a tax increase for our citizens.
Thank you.
That's all I have now.
Councilmember Fender.
TJ, I need to be excused. I have a meeting at 7.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to excuse Councilmember Garamella?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Councilmember Rabati made a motion. Councilmember Scroggins Johnson made a second. All those in favor of excusing Councilmember Garamella from the meeting at this time, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries 6-0. 7-0, sorry. Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I'll recognize Councilmember Fender, and then if anyone else has something, and then we'll circle back for a second round.
All right, thank you. Martha, thank you for putting this strategy together. I'm just trying to line up the line items here to what was in our budget so I can just understand where it's coming from.
Okay.
The last line item on there for the MAFC landscape replacement,
Yes.
where is that coming out of? I didn't see it as a separate line item specifically.
It's on page 36 of your budget priorities, and Public Works asset maintenance projects, the second bullet for landscape improvements.
Okay.
And it talks about renovating the poor quality of landscaping in MAFC.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could clarify, Councilmember Fender, it would still appear in your budget. We would utilize a different funding source to pay for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then going back to the top of the list, the new position vehicles, $216,000. It looks like that corresponds to this line item for 3 fully equipped police vehicles.
Correct.
So I'm going back to something you said earlier. I didn't quite understand. You said last fiscal year we deferred vehicles.
We did not replace any vehicles last year. We also did not purchase any last year. But we have new vehicles sitting on there from vehicle replacements in the past that are not being utilized just because there's vacancies in the police department. So we're suggesting using the vehicles we already have on site to be used by those 3 new positions.
Okay. So we had enough new vehicles from 2 years ago to carry us through last year for any needed new vehicles? And then...
So we periodically replace, so there are in effect new vehicles that because the positions aren't filled, just aren't being used. Yes.
Okay.
And then we have some vehicles that we hold in reserve, just tends to be a strategy we use so that we can keep rolling stock going on the road.
All right.
So those will be on the table to be able to utilize as well.
Okay. All right, I understand. Thank you.
Councilmember Rao, please.
Well, first of all, I do appreciate the idea of having a cent of the tax rate, dedicated to parks. I mean, for me, I think what we're trying to do is create future capacity. My concern is, having a tax increase last year. I wish now I would have even been willing to have had another cent or 2 above what we voted on so that when we do raise taxes, we actually take a percentage of that and allocate it to transportation and parks. And so, I'm open to it, but my concern is the bond, doing the 3-cent bond, having a tax increase 3 years in a row. Now, the question becomes, if we can't get consensus to get a cent on the tax rate now, we've got the $620,000, but what about, and also 1 cent is about, how much revenue is that, 300,000? Or 600? 620, sorry, 620, sorry. So, I guess the question becomes, where else? It doesn't seem like there's anywhere else we can go to find that capacity. But I think that's what the mayor is trying to say, is that we would, whatever increases in taxes we do does generate revenue in the future. And that's for me the balancing act that I'm having a hard time with. I mean, if I didn't have the bond, I wouldn't even blink an eye. I would say, yeah, let's do let's do a cent, let's do a 2 cent. But I'm just trying to sort of have an open conversation. I mean, I don't know whether there's, how much we have coming into payment in lieu down the pipeline where we could, say, look, if we're going to get another, maybe we couldn't get a full 620,000, but could we get a half a cent worth that we could add into that reserve fund so that we're building that future capacity without having to raise the tax? And maybe even next year, I'd be willing, if I'm here, to, support a dedicated part of the tax rate to parks, just like we have for transportation. I just wanted to bring up that point. I'm just thinking out of the box, trying to clarify what you're saying.
I just want to make sure that we say things appropriately, that there is no dedication of 1 cent. There's the equivalent of 1 cent that's
what I
being
meant.
allocated.
Equivalent.
So let's be careful with those kinds of words. If you want to dedicate, then we need to bring forward an action with the budget, or it could happen actually at any point. Dedicating commits it, so it's no longer a part of or commingled with appropriating for operations annually. It's going to be committed and taken out and sent to that source. So let's just make sure if that's what council's interested in, we can certainly accommodate that. But right now, it's not quite there.
I'm fine with what you've done now, the 620,000. What I'm saying is that moving forward, having a cent on the tax rate that's dedicated to parks, so that 600,000 is being recurred every year, right? Now, if we're not going to have a cent increase for the parks, where else could we find that additional capacity to add to whatever that we have here, the 620,000? Is there, I mean, we don't have to answer that today. I'm just curious, if there's a way of finding capacity, that extra 300, 400,000, or whatever it is, extra that can come in here, then, we can always look at that. But I do like this idea of having, when we do increase taxes, having that directed to specific investments in transportation, in parks. Now, I know schools is also a concern, but we don't have any option there except, waiting to see how much funding that, is going to come in for school construction. Right? So that's all I have to say about that, just thinking out of the box.
Okay. Councilmember Abadi, please.
Well, first of all, I did want to say that words matter, and I think that calling the balancing of our commitment to parks and the desire to recognize that people are still struggling from COVID, that we have a lot of projects in the pipeline that we are going to be funding with a bond, and to call that political cover, I think, is offensive, and I think you should apologize, Mayor. I think that was offensive. That's the first thing. So for me, this is not about political cover, but it's about showing that we are valuing equally two things. We're valuing an investment in parks and recreation. We're trying hard to do that, and we're going in and cutting out stuff that we don't need right now, and the fact that we don't want to raise taxes this year in recognition of the fact that we hope that the public is going to support a bond that will raise their taxes next year, 3 cents. So that's one thing. The second thing is, this might be a no-brainer, but can you explain to me why each officer that we hire has to get their own car?
Braden and I both looked at you at the same time.
We all looked.
All right, Brandon's going to answer that question.
So
Go for it, Brandon.
it's a take-home car program, and so what that amounts to is that you assign each officer their vehicle. So there are several advantages to that, and I would tell you that I've worked in a system where we did not have that, and I've seen what the outcome of that is, and then I've worked in a system where you do have that. And I would tell you that once you have that, it is not an inexpensive thing to get to, but once you have it, it is far advantageous financially and in other ways for the department. So I think where that comes from is that it is part of a recruitment tool, because I will tell you that we are competitive with other departments because in part we have a take-home vehicle and that's their office. I mean, think of it that way, is that, we assign each one of our staff a workspace or an office, and for the cops, that's their office. And so, instead of having to come to work every day, move all your stuff into your office, set your office up, and take it all back out at the end of the day, you have that office. You also find that police officers will take much better care of a car that they know they're going to drive every day. Proven fact. It will extend the life of the vehicle. Think of it like the car you own and drive versus that rental you get every once in a while. So there's the smile, right? That's it, because you don't treat a rental like you treat your own car. And so the police officers think of that as their car because it's theirs to drive. And so, that is the other side of that is it's important in that context. And then it results in better maintenance. And so as you add police officers, you add vehicles. And yes, that is an expensive upfront cost, but I would tell you that it more than pays itself back.
Okay. All right, just ask. I've beaten up more than one rental car myself, so totally get where you're coming from there. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to apologize to Councilmember Abadi and the rest of the council that political cover was not meant to be offensive in any way. It was simply, I appreciate staff giving us the opportunity to meet this need in such a way that was easy and palatable and didn't affect the property tax rate.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure. Did anyone have any other questions on this option? Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So I just have to add to what Brandon just said. I was on council when we made that change to give each police officer their own vehicle, and it was I vaguely remember the conversation, and it was a decision that was not easy to make. As Brandon said, it's a financial adjustment, but I too am very glad we made that decision because I can see the pride that our police officers take in the car, in their having their own vehicle, and I agree with Brandon on the cost savings and the other kind of savings that come around. But I wanted to say, if you've never done a ride along with a police officer, maybe we can. That's something we all, now that if we're comfortable, I would highly recommend.
Ride-alongs with the police officers?
Yeah,
So if I could, since
I want
you
to do
brought
that
that up,
tomorrow.
one of the things that Chief Andrews and I have talked about is a modified Citizens Police Academy for council members.
Oh, yes. I went through the first one years ago.
Oh, my
So,
God,
you know,
me.
currently, the sign-ups for the 8-week, 3-hour night class is open for our citizens. We're talking about a more streamlined, but really focused on, I'll say it this way, you really probably better understanding the police officer's life as we make requests from you for officers. So she and I are already working on that. It would likely take a commitment of a Saturday or 2 Saturdays or something for you to get the experience. But we are working on that for you, and I'm sure Fire would be happy to offer something similar. Probably won't allow you to drive a police or a fire truck.
Oh, come on now. I want to drive a fire truck.
But you can go up in the ladder.
Say the bucket, yes.
But that is something that we're working on. It's probably a fall thing, just weather-wise and workload-wise, et cetera. But we are working on that for you.
I am so happy to hear that, Martha.
So psyched for that.
Because then otherwise I'm not sure, unless you've done any of this, I'm not sure the ordinary person really understands what happens in the daily work life of a police officer or a firefighter. I still don't think I understand a firefighter either, but it is well worth a ride along to see. Just Brandon's not kidding. It is their office. I remember, being, now I'm going to date myself, when I rode along and they were printing tickets right there and everything. There was a printer in everything, all the equipment.
Itself is phenomenal.
Oh, phenomenal is right.
You've approved body-worn cameras. All of those things that are now a part of of our annual operating budget, that you could see some of those things in action.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm done
The
now.
best New Year's Eve I ever had was when I traveled with the late Officer John McBride on New Year's Eve. It was amazing till 1
Were
in the
you in
morning.
the back of the car?
No, and sidebar, his joke was, no, he was such a funny guy. He came to my house, and I'll never forget this, like 11 years ago. He came to our house and knocked on the door, and he looked at my mother, and he goes, well, Mrs. Rod, don't you worry. If anyone starts shooting at him, we'll just tell him to duck in the back. And then the whole family got so scared. But it was so much fun. God rest his soul. He was an amazing guy, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I have pictures of Councilmember Fender wearing 150 pounds of fire gear. Just putting that out there.
I have a picture of that too.
Oh, dear.
So Mayor, we have probably been talking about budget for an hour now. I'm gonna just do a poll if there's other final questions on the options or any other guidance and feedback that council wants to give staff as they work now to prepare for the budget.
And I'm gonna add, Brandon has printed the touchless fixtures presentation if council wants to discuss that now. If you want to see the phases, what we've done, what's in this budget. So he has that if council wants to talk about that.
Okay. Councilmember Rabati, you brought that up. Is that something you'd like to go over tonight?
I would be lying if I said I was dying to go over that tonight. How much would that extend the meeting, do we think?
I don't think it would extend it very long if it helps you get that resolved. We are, reminder, and I told Jeannie not to say this to you, but now I'm going to say it to you. If you get to consensus tonight, that's your best way of letting the public know what they can expect going into a public hearing on Tuesday. So, again, I'm hearing that this modification as presented is acceptable. And we have a work session after the public hearing at our meeting next Tuesday that we could go over language. Jeannie's also, if you've been through this before, and all of you have, she's going to go over all the budget ordinance stuff. We want to make sure we're not hiding anything. We want you to really understand all of the narrative language that goes along with the numbers. And we want you to have that, and we could do that next Tuesday. But if you're going to consider making some other adjustments, it's probably worth a few extra minutes tonight. If it's really a modification you want to make to the budget.
I really do want to know what we're spending that money on. Can we just take a few minutes?
Mayor?
Yep, that would be great. That's why we're here, to have discussions on items like this.
Go ahead and once Brandon passes that out, let him sort of lead this conversation. He and Giselle know it better than anyone.
We'll be in a position to put it on the screen so the audience can see it too, and will be part of the record. Can we use the ELF as a backup if we need it?
Do you have it? Did you email it to Eric?
I mean, it was in the October 22nd. I emailed it. Yeah, it actually should be in the P drive from the October 27th, 2020 meeting. Let me see what the item number is.
Yes, that would be helpful.
Is that on this item or for final comments?
Comments.
Okay. That's fine, so we'll do Ann, then Donna.
Okay, that's even better. Just tell me what level it's under. Okay. This is it, Brandon? Okay.
It goes straight to the spreadsheet pages.
Too far? Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Seven.
This one?
Yeah.
7? Okay.
Seven.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, what you see on the screen there is Giselle had proposed a 4-phase operation of building touchless. And then the next page, Jeannie briefly shows a breakdown of 1A and 1B. So we have accomplished 1A. Most of that work has been done. And then 1B and 2, 3, and 4 are remaining. So what we're talking about is some work at the town buildings. And then you'll see in the gray, Giselle broke this out by starting with the frequently touched public use or no capital cost items, and then we went next to frequently touched and employee-used items, and then to lower use or the higher cost at some of the fire stations, and then finally to the lower risk, which were toilets and urinals. So you've got about 20, 40, 80 in phases 2, 3, and 4, plus the 12 that was in phase 1B, puts you a little at 92, 93, so we call it 100 to allow for, it's been some time, there would be some increases. So that's essentially the 100 that's in the proposed FY22 budget that would allow public works staff and in some cases some contracted folks to get that work done.
Okay. Looking for questions or comments at this time. I'll recognize Councilmember Abadi, followed by Councilmember Fender.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have mine up. I'm still looking at it.
Okay. Councilmember Fender, followed by Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, please.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. I've been wanting to ask this forever, but with this initiative of the touchless door handles, we come in the front door of Town Hall, but then to come in this room, we have to touch the handles. So is anything being done about that?
It's on the list, yes.
Okay.
Just haven't gotten to that yet.
All right. And then the only thing I was going to mention too is I was just at Church Street Park a week ago, and their faucets or water fountains haven't been converted.
No, we have had some difficulty in identifying a suitable outdoor touchless water fountain.
Okay.
So they make something like that for indoors, but those outdoors have to sustain some temperature changes and other things. And so we just have been challenged in identifying a suitable fountain to put in an outdoor location that's touchless.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, followed by Councilmember Abadi.
Thank you. I have a question on page number 6 as it relates to the Cedar Fork Community Center. It's under potential challenges, stating that since this center is connected to Cedar Fork Elementary, Wake County has oversight into any changes to fixtures that might be proposed by the town. Is this Cedar Fork Community Center still in scope of this project?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the things, one of the steps we have to go through, but absolutely isn't.
Okay.
And we have done some work there.
I would think the county would be embracing this.
Yeah, I don't think it's that they won't,
Yeah.
and I don't want to send that message. It's
Right.
just
It's
another
just
step in going
it's
through that
another
process with
it's
them.
another barrier that we have to
Correct.
overcome. Okay. Great.
Untenable just time, usually.
Right. Of course. But I'm glad to hear that because I think there's a lot of activity there. There's before and after school programs. So it's a significant investment in the health and safety of the public. So really glad to hear that. The other question, comment is on page 9 as it relates to peer communities. And I appreciate having the information, but is it not correct that some of the communities do have some touchless existing? And this is really a delta, analysis of what they've done to improve their health and safety, measures more?
Yes, some communities certainly had done some work, absolutely.
So we went from behind to maybe ahead now with this proposal. That's what I'm
I
assuming.
think that's fair. And if we complete this proposal, absolutely, I would say ahead of some.
Okay, great, perfect. That's all the comments I have, thank you.
Councilmember Rabati, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it might be a good idea to just take a straw poll on where everybody is on the $100,000 of ARPA money, just because if there's no reason to belabor this if everyone else is in favor of going forward.
Okay, I would just add one little tweak in the outdoor fountains, like at Morrisville Community Park, the new ones that we put up. I don't think we need to make those outdoor ones touchless, because I think that those function fine. But other than that, just had to put that one out there. So anyone in favor of continuing to talk about the $100,000 and possibly eliminating from this budget, please go ahead and raise their hand.
I'm confused, Mayor.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Okay.
Maybe,
I don't know whether to raise my hand or not.
Who is in favor of the proposed initiative in its entirety and with the budget allocation that we currently have in the budget relating to touchless fixtures? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So leaving everything the way it is.
Right. Are you in favor of this as presented? Yes or no?
Okay, and please raise your hand now if that's the case.
I'll go yes. Make it unanimous.
So we are unanimous on that, so
That's Satish's proxy down there, Steve?
Thank you.
that's a good discussion.
I think this is
Yes.
extremely helpful.
I think it's a good use of ARPA funds.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Agree.
Things that might go away otherwise. Okay, so now we're at the point for final comments on this, and it's time to also have discussion. We had a good discussion at the end of our last meeting on this, because we don't necessarily have to get to consensus, although I think staff will summarize what they've heard, but the reason we're doing this is so that the public can weigh in on the 25th about what they've heard, because nothing's set in stone. Even if we reach consensus tonight, we want to hear from the public about what their thoughts are and if they'd like to maybe adjust anything that we're discussing. So that's, I think, a good way to think of this as the purpose. So I'd like to first recognize Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So I wanted to make sure what you all are going to do moving forward. And I would like to see you include this alternative you presented to us tonight into what is shown to the public for the public hearing on Tuesday.
Okay. Councilmember Rabati?
What?
I thought it looked like you're
Oh, no, I
lifting
was
that.
just moving it. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I'll go next. I don't see anyone else right now. So a lot of this I've touched on last time, and I just want to reiterate in advance of the public hearing. I'm in favor of the budget as presented and believe we can make it even better and provide a better future for Morrisville by adding to the inherent financial capacity of the town, by adding a penny to our existing tax rate to bring it to 37 cents this year and create a reserve for parks, which is dedicated, not just allocated out of existing funds. The bond will get us part of the way to our needs, and it will be 3 cents next year. So I very much recognize that. But like saving for your children's college, you start early looking at the future, and if we hope to do much beyond what it is in our 3 bonds, we will need more financial capacity. We can ask each household to invest an additional $37 per year in improving the quality of our life in town of Morrisville, and that's just taking the $365,000 medium home. A single tank of gas or a night at the movies for a family of 4. That amount of money may be the difference between Morrisville proactively addressing our challenges and reaching closer to its potential versus Morrisville continuing to be at the mercy of market forces like growth, development, state-level underfunding of roads and schools. In fact, investing in Morrisville is maybe the best investment a resident can make. For every 45 cents of investment, the business community contributes 55 cents. So for your $37, the business community more than matches it. They contribute $45. Your $37 is now $82. You will not find a better return on investment anywhere, and the equity of your home will reflect these gains in a virtuous cycle. I would like to think that we have a council up here now willing to be open-minded to the reality that we are behind in our infrastructure and quality of life investments our residents want, and the world around us did not pause, nor is it slowing down its pace of growth and change. The only way for us to not fall further behind is to have more resources at our disposal. This budget provides the human capital, and the bond will go a long way to provide a relatively inexpensive tool to finance a finite set of needs, but does not help widen 54, provide a town green, address the need for 11 more staff positions next year, or any number of other emerging interests we hear from our residents. We will be raising the property tax rate by 3 cents in next year's budget to finance our debt. A single penny this year provides a stronger, more resilient town positioned to be proactive in seeking opportunities to connect our diverse community to an enhanced quality of life. So I just want to share those again. I'm very hopeful that at the public hearing and using the budget portal, we will hear from residents in favor of that perception and perspective or against it. The more we hear from the residents, the more informed we can be as a group. So honestly, I don't expect a lot of people to say, please raise my taxes, but I just wanted to put it out there that at some point, I think it's going to be important for, if not this council, for future councils, to really have a discussion about it and help the town move forward in that way. And this budget goes a long way. The last few budgets have gone a long way. And if we want to keep up our pace, that's just where I am right now. So thank you very much for listening. Does anyone else have any more comments on the budget in advance of next Tuesday's meeting? I'd like to recognize Councilmember Fender.
Yeah, I will just add that I support this budget with these changes of allocating the equivalent of 1 cent for parks and recreation reserve fund. I am grateful to see that we're continuing to invest in sustainability projects like the solar panel array, electric vehicle charging stations, and improvement on building automation systems. And then we also have funds in here for smart city initiatives. So I'm fairly pleased with the budget as it is. I do wish we could do more, like Mayor Colley would like for us to do. You know, we are going to be asking the public in November for an additional 3 cents tax rate. And so, you know, and that investment is going to be very important to our town, that goes through to be able to invest in fire station and invest in land acquisition for parks. So I'm pleased where we are right now. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, if staff would like to sort of share what they hear as consensus so the public understands that.
Would you like
I'll
to
be
do
happy
that?
to do that.
Okay.
So the materials, Jeannie will have to figure out the best way to make it as clear as possible for the citizens, but we will adjust our budget presentation materials to reflect these changes in the materials that are presented that would continue to be presented with no tax rate increase, and there would be a draft resolution that
There would be a resolution of intent to establish the capital reserve fund.
Would be the additional document that we will draft and get prepared for Tuesday night's meeting.
Okay. Any feedback on that? That sounded accurate to me.
I look forward, sorry.
Councilmember Rao?
I look forward to hearing from the public about some of the ideas that have been, I mean, I support this budget as is. I'm open, you know, to looking at creating future revenue capacity, but I want to hear from the public and, you know, I just, for me, want to look at where there might be opportunity to build capacity to that level without having to raise the tax this year. But I do believe that we should be looking at, you know, there's nothing wrong with looking at investing for the future. So I want to hear from the public and then, you know, make a decision. But I approve the changes that you all have proposed.
Okay. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Since everybody seems to be taking a turn, I just want to sum up that this budget came together for us, I think, a little easier than last year. Last year, we had to do about 47 iterations, and, you know, at the end of that, I think we had a really solid budget. Although we had an increase that was really necessary, it really was a solid budget. And this year, you've provided a very good balance of the, needs of the town and wants of the public in a no increase scenario. So I'm grateful for that. I think it does show capacity increases as well because the town has grown. So taxes are one source of revenue for the town. But there's other sources of revenue, and that's due to our growth. We have natural increases in funding, and some of our fees have increased over time in the volume of activity despite the pandemic. There has been some increases. Yes, there has been some deficits as well, and that's why the federal money is so needed. But I thank both of you for this new scenario because I think that does kind of get us to where we need to be. I'm very hopeful that we get a significant amount of public feedback, both positive and negative or creative. Suggest something if you don't like it. What can we do? It's helpful to get creative ideas from the public because maybe we can't implement that exact idea, but maybe there's something related that we can do. So we need feedback to help us understand the needs of our community. And that's all of our public. That's both the residents and the business community because they were hurt with the COVID situation as much as our residents were. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Rabati.
I guess we are all taking a turn. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm really happy with this budget. I see sustainability programs in there. I see dedication to parks. I see public safety measures. I'm really happy that you were, not we really, but that you guys were able to get everything into the budget that I feel reflects the values that we've been talking about the whole time that I've been on the council. So thank you very much. I think that this is going to be a good budget going forward for the town, and I think that the fact that we appear to be able to do it without raising taxes is a bonus. So thank you.
Okay, excellent. At this time, we've been going for a while, so I think it's maybe a good time to take a break before we go into the next item. Does that make sense, or do you want to? Yeah, okay. So right now it's 7:28. Let's go ahead and reconvene at 7:39, please. Take 10 minutes. Thank you.
And then it's the bond referendum.
We're going to come back into session at this time. Jeannie Hooks, Director of Management Services, will facilitate our next discussion. Ms. Hooks.
All right, so I'm going to try to be even more quick through this process. So tonight we're here to really talk about affirming ballot language because we have worked all the way up to and put in place intermediate outreach, received information, and we're at that point in time in our timeline that we need to affirm so that we can actually move and prepare formal items that must be done in June and July. So that's pretty much where we're at. I do want to share with you the intermediate outreach. I provided you a summary. I won't go over everything here other than the sentiment seems to be, with the yeses and the maybes, that about 80% of those that did reply support the investment in the community and the use of a tax increment to do so. And that really lines up with what your historic information as well was telling you, that these potential ballot items are worthy of being on the ballot and are of interest to the community. So here we're at really the point where I have to look back to council and identify that this is your ballot language that's in draft form at this point. And I'm going to pause here because I need to actually, Mayor, poll council to make sure is there consensus to move forward with this language so that staff can work with bond counsel and start preparing those formal documents and getting them on the agendas for June and July. So this is council's bond language, and I'm certainly willing to answer any questions about the respondent information if that's what you would like to do as well. So I'm going to pause here.
Okay. Before we go ahead and take that straw poll, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Scoggins Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Jeannie, it would be helpful to me to know about the no responses or the no maybes, because there might be something in some of the bond language that made them feel like it was not as compelling of a story as we all believe. Each one of these are compelling. It's just maybe one of these areas is not as helpful as the other.
So in the few that were in this category of no responses, it was that they just primarily focused on the ones they liked the most. I don't know that I saw negatives with those groups, but I did provide you with the details and the backup so that you could see clearly which ones left out a response in the columns of public safety, streets and sidewalks and connectivity, and parks and recreation. But there were just a few of those, and again, my sense of it, of what they provided and how they responded or maybe didn't respond in the extra information, their narrative, it just was that they were more partial to the other two.
Okay, so it was more of a personal preference.
I think it was more about the projects that they were most interested in is what they answered to.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to be clear that there wasn't a big opportunity for improvement, but it sounds like everything was.
The ones that said no were very definitive in the narrative information.
Right. And that's probably reflective of our public as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So well, I'm sorry. Oh, did you want to say something, Martha? I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I can wait.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say thank you for going through this important feedback exercise. I know I was one of the vocal ones that wanted to have a better feel for how the public felt early on. And so I appreciate this, Jeannie, and I know this was a Herculean effort. You were not planning on doing it, so I thank you for that. I do think the feedback we got is very reflective probably of our community, and obviously it's not scientific, but but it I think gives us some very good information that we can use as we're moving forward through the education portion of this bond. Yeah. So I think we have garnered enough information for me to make me feel comfortable, and also I think information to help us moving forward. So so I thank you for that. And as far as the bond ballot questions, I'm comfortable with where we are here today as well. So thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, you don't need a formal motion, you just need head nods,
It's just
pretty
a
much?
consensus at this point, Mayor, that works. You will have your formal documents that will be a vote. One will be a notice of intent that sort of establishes you're going for a bond referendum, and the next one is going to be the actual bond order that includes all the information and language.
Okay, so at this time, if you want to bring up the bond language itself, we can go ahead and I'll ask, please nod your heads if you affirm these amounts, this language as is, because this is what we're planning to go forward with. So council, head nods on that?
This is exactly as you've seen previously. Okay.
Seeing a couple of head nods, looking for a little bit more definitive.
Mayor, I'm sensing there's a consensus here.
Okay,
Okay.
I believe you have the consensus of the council to move forward, the affirmation. Do you agree? Okay.
Town Manager Page,
Thank you, that's a
did you have
very big
comment?
step.
You're shaking your head too. Brandon, you're going to shake your head? Okay. All right.
Okay. Excellent, that's a big step. Thank you all.
That is a big step. So you should be proud of yourselves, proud of the community for those that got involved and engaged. I'm certainly proud of the effort that was rolled out through communications, through the staff that have participated as project managers and who will continue to be participating, and as well as council and the community. It's a huge decision, and I'm glad we're here today, nodding our heads. and forward momentum. So thank you. So I'm just going to pull up your bond calendar. This is just for information, just to let you know where we're really at, what we have on the agenda, and staff's already working really to start pulling together information, now that we know what we're working with, to definitively pull together information so we can have a viable conversation with LGC when we have this application. So that takes a little bit of work in gathering information, but we have a good portion of it already. So let's talk about next steps just a little bit, just so you know where we're headed now that we are moving forward. So one of the things staff's already working, we have a steering team that is looking at how do we create advocacy group. So we've asked you to share with us really folks you think might be interested in becoming these community partners and helping to spread the word. Council is critically important to that as well. We are working on internally just really identifying who they are, vetting their level of interest and willingness to engage. We're working on that. We're going to be preparing to arm them with information, facts and information. So some of what might happen is really some type of orientation for them, an advocacy kit, and helping them set up and establish other types of gatherings throughout the community if need be. So those are the things that we're talking about, putting together and organizing at this time. So the timeline between June and July, because we're working now on those formal documents, gives us some capacity to really work and define what that's going to look like. And we'll certainly be sharing that information back with council. And as you know, I've already gone over preparing for the formal bonds. Also, what we're going to be doing in the meantime, between trying to set up and stage and develop this advocacy group and prepare formal documents, we're going to continue a presence of bond information. But really what Will's team is working on is staging for that phase 2 communications. Now that we are going to be processing through those formal adoptions, we now have a definitive thing to work with and put out in the community. And we're going to be ramping up. It's going to be a strategy of ramping up. We believe the community has heard that you're interested in doing a bond. It's just kind of early for a lot of engagement. I think the closer you get to the vote, the more interested and engaged people become. So we're sort of targeting, because we need time in June and July to prepare advocacy, to prepare the formal documents. Great time to start preparing and staging for that phase 2 plan that exists, and sharpening our pencils as to what it's going to look like, the vision and the feel and the outcome. And that ramp up strategy is we're going to have a kickoff, and we're sort of targeting what we think is the best event, and that's Morrisville. I mean, the number of people that engage and come out in our community, hopefully not in a COVID limitation environment, is just a phenomenal opportunity to sort of kick things off. And then from there, we ramp up and ratchet up that type of outreach. So we're looking at really creative things, such as a professional video to really communicate to the community what the benefits and value these projects are going to bring you for the tax dollars. And then other things we're going to do are professional looking pop-up displays. Some of them you've already seen, but really an example of some of that's going to occur. More so, we're trying to get creative with what does a forum look like? Creative opportunities to bring people together and start conversations. So not just your typical, let's bring them into town hall and do a town hall style community outreach, but something different, exciting, energized. And so we're working on framing that and what's that going to look like and feel like, and where multiple places that could occur that creates that excitement and energy. And then start our advocacy group and partners down that path and putting them in motion. So that's sort of where we're at. I'm going to check with Martha. Anything I missed? Anything you want to touch on? Okay.
No, we are working through the names all of you provided. Thank you. If you think of others, please let us know. We're talking about our strategies to educate and arm them, train them with how to be a bond advocate, and really trying to evaluate, making sure we sort of got coverage in our neighborhoods, in our polling places, in our variety of interest levels. As Jeannie mentioned, everybody might not want to advocate for all three areas. That doesn't mean they can't be effective advocates for us. So we're already working on all of those things.
And we are reaching out to the different types of stakeholders in order to be able to try to build that base. And I think that'll be awesome. So that is really my update. Again, want to thank council for the decision, the nod to allow staff to carry this forward for you and to really start staging and setting up for some high energy, some great things happening in Morrisville.
And
So I'll take questions or comments at this time.
Sure. I remember in 2012, the Chamber of Commerce was a big collaborative partner. So have you had in-depth discussions with them as of yet, or?
They will be on the list of groups in terms of advocacy groups that we're going to work with and get them involved in the right way.
Okay.
So yes.
Preliminary, not in depth. They're working on revamping their government affairs committee, which is a good in for us on that. But Linda and I have talked about working together on this several times.
Okay. That's wonderful. Good. And you were around for the last bond referendum, so.
And actually, 2004 as well.
Okay.
Been
So
here long enough for that.
Lots of institutional wisdom there, so we appreciate that. Any other questions for Jeannie or Martha at this time?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go home in daylight.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Two great discussions and presentations tonight on this work session. Anything for the good of the order, Town Manager Page?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to thank everyone for watching the meeting of the Morrisville Town Council. We hope you plan to join us again. Our next meeting is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Please feel free to email your town council members at towncouncil@townofmorrisville.org or visit www.townofmorrisville.org/council for additional contact information. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem. I have a
Second.
from Councilmember Scroggins Johnson. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries unanimously 6-0. Thank you all, and see you all on Tuesday.